So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. I'm here today with my politics team colleagues, Avi Bajpai, who is at the legislature with me all the time, and the rest of our team, and Korie Dean on our politics team covering higher education, which always has a crossover with politics and, of course, government. So we're here. You're listening to this in the final week of June, and it's crunch time. So we can tell you what you definitely can expect. Surprises are like, I think this past week, nobody thought the most controversial bill would be about shrimp. So there's definitely things that are going to come up that there's no way to predict until it happens. So we're at there's no technical end of session. The North Carolina law does not state what the end date is for the long session. Theoretically, it's the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, because the primary work is to pass a budget, and there isn't one as of the time we're recording this, and there's not going to be for a while. So that was kind of really the biggest news, not controversial like the shrimp bill, but the biggest policy legislative news of this past week is Senate Leader Phil Berger and House Speaker Destin Hall saying, no, we're not moving toward negotiations. This hasn't happened. And as of after session on Thursday, Berger told us that he and Hall had not even set yet the date that they'll come back at the end of this week. So if you're listening to this Tuesday morning, the plan is still to finish the work, most of the policy work at the end of the week, and then decide when they'll come back, maybe a day or two in July, August. If you'll recall, this happened in previous years with then Speaker Moore, where they were just, bickering, debating, negotiating the budget for a while over different issues. So it's not really over. What we are going to see, though, are potential of these side budget bills that have other things with money. There's going to be a Helene bill. That's probably the one most fruitful thing out of the recent budget negotiations that have stalled, where the House just wanted to run, a Helene bill by itself. The Senate wanted it part of it. The big budget's not happening, so they're going to run that separate. So the Helene bill will be one big thing to cover. A lot of things are up in the air with raises and jobs. I'm going to turn to you, Korie, first to talk about what's already happening at UNC and kind of what people are looking at on the job front.
Yeah, well, first I just want to say I feel a little bit about like Charlie Brown with the football, because I feel like every year we know that there's not going to be a budget by July 1st, but every year we hope, and then here we are. So anyway, I think probably the UNC system maybe anticipated that, but they were also anticipating big budget cuts to the system. In both the House and the Senate's budget proposals, there were I think upwards of like $130 million in suggested cuts to the UNC system. So because of that, and also in light of all the federal changes with research funding and things along those lines, UNC system president Peter Hans has implemented, they're not calling it a hiring freeze, but they're calling it a personnel cap, kind of similar, but not quite. So essentially, all 17 campuses in the system have to keep the amount of money they're spending on salaries at the level they were in April. They also have to keep their administrative staff headcount at the same level it was in April. And now all chancellors or somebody that they designate, like the chief financial officer or along those lines, have to approve all new faculty and staff hires across campus. So, yeah, I think that, the system is aware that there are going to be cuts probably in the final budget whenever we get that these federal changes are obviously having a big impact, and they're trying to brace for that. Obviously, Dawn, you've written about that we're probably going to see, not as much extra revenue, in the state. So that's also part of it. But yeah, I mean, we're already seeing the impacts of even though we don't have a budget, people anticipating what might be in there.
Do you think maybe in past years it has been a lot of, and obviously people still care about what their raises are, what their salaries are, and that's been a focus of a lot of past sort of budget uncertainty, or big capital projects might be part of things that, in the UNC system where people are worried about budget uncertainty. But at this point, it's just about hiring, keeping jobs, I guess, because we're looking at cuts, potential cuts.
Yeah, it does seem a bit more austere. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, like and I've been covering higher ed for a couple years now, and covering those budget cycles. It's been okay. Well, the UNC system is asking for this big host of things, and then they don't end up getting all of that. We saw that with like enrollment funding, which this budget is trying to address as well. But I'm sure campuses feel differently, that a lot of that, whether it's a wish list or things that they, actually need to keep the lights on, what is the dynamic there? But yeah, this is literally, are we going to be able to pay the people that we employ, or are we going to be able to hire new people? And at least for right now, no. I mean, probably, there's a lot more restrictions on can you hire new people or keeping your levels where they are.
Mm-hmm. The other budget fight is over taxes, but that's not really an immediate thing. It's about future tax triggers, not even the reduction to the individual income tax rate that's already set to happen next year. It's the House wanting to change what the triggers are for years after that, compared to what the Senate wants to do. And if there is no budget at all, any big budget that has everything in it, the Senate would more or less get Republican leadership would get more or less what they want because of what would remain in place. So there are kind of different incentives, and as Senate Leader Berger said the other day, pressures as far as budget negotiations go. If people are wondering about the taxes, on the House version of the bill wants to reinstate that sales tax holiday at back to school time. That would not have been this year. That would have been for 2026. So that doesn't affect this year. And Avi, what do you think are kind of the other sort of the summer of uncertainty that we're going into as far as budget and funding?
Well, I mean, you mentioned all of the cuts that both chambers identified and proposed. So if there's no agreement on a budget bill, then that's one big open question, because it's been floated by both chambers, and the specifics have been different. So waiting to see what happens with that. But you mentioned the Helene bill. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. This past week, Democrats in the Senate were trying to highlight that and put some pressure on the Republicans. There was this talk about a discharge petition. And then it turns out that it looks like now Senate Republicans have actually agreed to hear that bill, put it forward in committee.
It sort of worked.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't actually have the discharge petition, Senate Rules Chair, Bill Rabin had the move if he just re-referred it to another committee. So it restarts that 10-day clock. So Democrats didn't get, if they were seeking just to bring, attention to the bill. But also there's other things at play. It just wasn't, their move on this.
Yeah. So that's now supposed to be heard in the Appropriations Committee on Monday afternoon. So by the time people listen to this, it's a good chance that bill, a PCS for it, may have been heard and approved, and that could be moving towards the floor. One
other thing to note is that we're recording this before that, but the Senate has a voting session at 7 Monday night. So that's also things that are moving. And then with everything in rules, and we're really at this super crunch time of like the controversy over the shrimping bill, which was adding, a shrimping trawling ban to a fishing bill, is that things are coming last minute and fast, and tensions can be high on that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what broke some of the tension at the building this week that involves dairy, and what else to expect as we wind down these days. We'll be right back.
Eczema is unpredictable.
but you can flare less with Ebglyss, a once-monthly treatment for moderate to severe eczema. After an initial 4-month or longer dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan here with Korie Dean and Avi Bajpai. Before the break, I mentioned dairy and kind of breaking the tension. And it was because it was I don't know if it's annual or maybe just like every legislative long session, the milk chugging contest, which is this bipartisan Korie, North Carolina thing. There was only one Democrat this time and majority Republican, but so I posted a video on Instagram and Twitter if you want to look at it. After like working my way through the crowd to get in the table, because all of a sudden you hear, it was Rose Hoban in the press room, Audie, I think you texted me, it's like milk chugging is happening now. And everybody like runs and it's outside the back door of the legislative building. And this really is the time of session where it's this tense point of controversy of policy of everything else. And it's something that's, sponsored by the, dairy groups, North Carolina, that is just a funny thing that people can do for 5 minutes, And so it was House Democrat Allison Dahl who has done it. So I remember going in another year and it was her versus Republican Senator Ralph Heiss. And I feel like Heiss won. Well, they were both on opposite sides of the table because it's House versus Senate. And I want to say it was Senator Eddie Settle, Representative Alan Chesser, Representative Moss
was there, yep.
Senator Britt showed up.
And then immediately ran back to the committee, Judiciary.
And I feel like I don't know if we're forgetting somebody. Oh, McNeely. So Representative McNeely. They're all Republicans. Dahl's the only Democrat, like I said. But it was just fun and funny to watch them, chug milk at a table. And then they had Howling Cow ice cream, which is NC State thing, right? Higher ed reporter, Korie. And it was just kind of a break in all of this stuff that's going on. And that was even before the shrimp debate, which we'll probably have a podcast more in depth about at some point this summer, because that bill did pass the Senate with 4 Republicans against, all Democrats 4, and the rest of the Republicans 4. And now it goes to the House. Now the House could take it up this week or not, so there are a few things. What else do we know for certain and legislative certainty, I guess, anyway, Avi, that people should be ready for this week?
Well, let me start with things that are going to be happening at the tail end of this week, and that is certain because we know it's happening. So Governor Stein has a couple of pending bills on his desk, some really big ones.
We're recording this on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, so by the time people listen to this, this has all already happened. But he's got a couple of big bills on his desk, 2 immigration bills, a gun bill dealing with concealed carry and the permit requirement. So that is something that's quite major. It could very well be the first time he issues a veto this term. That's what is one expectation. So that's coming down right now. It'll have happened by the time you listen to this. Also, last week, the Senate started moving forward the House's DEI bill, anti-DEI bill that deals with state and local government.
I can talk about that a little bit. So that went through Juneteenth was a holiday. Of course, it's a federal holiday. It's a holiday. It was a McClatchy holiday. I was working and went to Senate Judiciary, which is usually Avi's our man in Judiciary. And they talked about that anti-DEI state agency bill, which I wrote about because of the timing of it on Juneteenth, which Democratic lawmakers and speakers brought up about how it was kind of this sort of added insult of, wanting to ban diversity, equity, inclusion in state agencies, how it's, defined in the bill, and to do that on a holiday, commemorating, all these enslaved people freed. So the timing of that. And there was also 2 Harry Potter references, which we have a busy headliner roundup. Otherwise, I would have made it my headliner, and Dolores Umbridge and the Ministry of Magic, and the idea of, obviously, it's criticized, the critics are, comparing the bill to this villain in Harry Potter, and, rooting out people. And so if DI more legislation moves this week, that's probably another veto from Stein. And Speaker Hall has said that, they're ready to override call the vote as they can.
Yeah, and just to specify, so we asked Senator Berger last week if the Senate is taking up the House's bill, does that mean that there's an agreement basically and the House will be taking up the Senate's 2 bills? And he was saying more or less probably that will happen. And now we're seeing on the schedule for next week, for this week, as you're listening, that the 2 Senate bills that deal with higher education and public schools, those are both in committee as well. So expect those to move forward quickly.
Another thing you can expect is every session, this session, you can expect the House session to start an hour late, which is pretty late, even later than under Speaker Moore. But there'll be things when there are sessions, things will be added to that day's calendar immediately. So, and the reason for this push is wanting to finish all the policy before the end of June, and then we'll find out as the budget fight continues. So, moving on to our picks for headliner of the week. Korie, I'll start with you. What is your headliner of the week?
Yeah, we have a lot of newsletters here at the NNO. We have Under the Dome. You're listening to the podcast. You can subscribe to the newsletter. I have Dean's List. You can subscribe to that. But also our tech reporter, Brian Gordon, writes Open Source, which is about business and tech in North Carolina. And his most recent issue was very interesting as a higher ed reporter. He writes about Mr. Beast, who is a very, I think, like one of, if not the most popular YouTuber. Basically, Brian details this lawsuit, I think, that Mr. Beast has filed. But in that, Mr. Beast's own lawyers say that he attended ECU, East Carolina University, which is not true. And it's a common misconception. So Brian details all of this, was able to confirm that no, he did not go to ECU. He did attend, I think it was Pitt Community College for like a semester. So very, very interesting, and highly recommend all of our newsletters, but especially that one for Brian this week.
So again, that's Dean's List. If you want to hear more in depth on higher ed and policy and other news, you should subscribe to Korie Dean's higher ed newsletter, which is called Dean's List, which is really a perfect name for it. Yeah. So I'll stick with the higher ed theme for my headliner. Korie and I broke a story about a week or so ago about UNC professor Ralph Barrick being essentially investigated by GovOps at the legislature, and obtained a letter from House Speaker Hall basically asking UNC for a series of records about Barrick and coronavirus research. And quickly, if you can, Korie, kind of fill people in on who Barrick is.
Yeah, so Ralph Barrick, scientist who has spent his entire career, 4 decades at UNC researching coronaviruses, and this is way, way before COVID-19 ever became a pandemic or anything like that. He just has spent his entire career researching this. His research led to the development or helped create the vaccines against COVID-19. But because of his work on coronaviruses and the vaccines, particularly with something called gain-of-function research. He's really become a target in recent years of misinformation, of conspiracy theories, of, really just generally the debate about how COVID-19 came to be, where it originated from, whether it was in nature, like most scientists believe, or if it did have something to do with a lab. That's been a national question, but now obviously the legislature is getting involved.
And at this point, it's just finding out what documents are out there, just looking around for facts. And so the deadline to provide information to GovOps was June 18th, and then they'll go through all of this. We are almost out of time. Avi, what is your headliner?
Just really quickly, it is the brutal forecast coming up for next week, and the temperatures that are 90, I'm just looking at this, 90, 93, 97, 99, 100 next Wednesday. And that's not even the feels like temperature. So I am sincerely hoping that this coming week is the last week that I'll be wearing a jacket going downtown, because it gets to be really fun.
Okay, thanks for that, Leia, because you could just buy a seersucker suit and wear seersucker.
Isn't that what you're wearing right now as we're recording?
We're recording this. I have multiple seersucker blazers.
Lobby over here.
And it really is a lighter, more comfortable fabric. I suggest that more people wear seersucker. So.
But even if we, go through the summer and we're back for skeletals and everything, I'm prepared. I have my insulated thermos bottle here that I stock up with a bunch of ice every morning. It lasts me the whole day, so I'm good to go.
But also, press are not allowed to drink water on the floor during sessions or in committee. So, all right, well, it's going to be a crazy week, everybody. Buckle up. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Korie Dean, Avi Bajpai, producer Laura Brache. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Sign up for our political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.